selector. Rewind selector. Rewind selector. Rewind selector. Rewind selector. Rewind selector.
Zeitgeist, a German word that translates to time mind or spirit mind, but more accurately reflects the idea that people, no matter how far apart, are in a collective spirit of togetherness. For example, Charles Darwin and Alfred Wallace didn't work together, yet arrived at pretty much the same conclusion: natural selection and theory of evolution. Elisha Gray and Alexander Graham Bell both walked into the patent office on the same day to submit plans for the telephone. These are major examples, but they represent the sense that people were collectively working toward a common goal. Today, possibly more than ever before, companies are researching ways to manage their data amongst teams that may be remote or dispersed. For the next 45 minutes, we'll speak with two customers who recently concluded their search for tools that would manage their SolidWorks data. I'm joined today by two people who've been helping clients manage their engineering data for over 40 years collectively, Patrick Brochu and Lisa Costa. Welcome, you two. Patrick, what is the audience going to learn today?
Today, the audience is going to learn we have two great hassle-free data management solutions. This will be told by two companies, one who has selected an on-cloud approach and the other an on-premise approach. We'll hear about their journeys with regards to selecting and using respective hassle-free data management solutions.
That's great. Our first customer has users throughout the United States and within the past year implemented SolidWorks PDM Professional.
Yes, Mark. We'll be speaking with Noah Podolewski, who is the Chief Technical Officer of Grain Machine, headquartered in Buffalo, New York. Let's go talk to Noah, who happens to be located in Boulder, Colorado today. Hello, Noah. Thank you for agreeing to share your story with us today about your journey. Before we get started, though, I'd like you to maybe share a little bit about yourself and your background.
Well, hi, Patrick. Thanks for having me on. So my name is Noah Portalewski. I am the CTO of Green Machine Equipment. I got my PhD in physics in 2008 from the University of Colorado at Boulder. And I still live in Boulder, Colorado. Green Machine is in Buffalo, New York. So I've been telecommuting since the start of the company about 8 years ago. After my PhD, I did a postdoc in physics at the University of Colorado for a few years. And then I got a very strong interest in electric vehicles and battery systems.
So Green Machine, I love the company name, and you started to share a little bit about what it's all about there. But so is it a conversion process, or maybe you could dive into that just a little bit more?
We sort of have three strands to the company. One of them is developing drive systems for OEM equipment. So actually taking diesel equipment and converting it to electric. The other is providing battery packs and drive systems to OEMs that want to develop their own electric line of equipment. And the third is actually a sort of sister company called Volta Energy Products. And they use some of our core battery technology in stationary storage. So this would be for, grid storage, demand response, things like that.
Well, that's all very interesting, Noah. So thank you for sharing that, a little bit about Green Machine and also about yourself. So let's now just talk about the Solidworks and how Solidworks earned its way inside of Green Machine.
Sure. So when we first started out, we were, like I said, we were literally the corner of a garage in a larger company, and we didn't have a whole lot of resources. So we started out literally using it. It's kind of funny in hindsight, but using Google SketchUp for designing our battery packs and doing sheet metal design and things like that. We pretty quickly realized that wasn't going to be adequate for our needs. So we went out looking for a CAD system. So we got Solidworks from our local VAR, and then we basically have been using it, expanding it to other engineers that come on ever since. At some time along there, we realized that Solidworks by itself was not going to be enough, and we actually needed a data management system. For the first few years, we just used literally a cloud drive, sort of like Dropbox, to store all of our data. And then we would use its, history features to do our best to keep track and control documents. But it was just, it was a very clunky solution. We would lose data or get overwritten all the time. So we went back and looked around for better solutions and saw that PDM existed and that it was tied in directly to Solidworks. Gave it a trial run, and within, pretty shortly after that trial run, canceled our subscription to the cloud-based service we were using before, which I should say was not Solidworks cloud-based. It was a competitor, and switched over to PDM. The onboard process was pretty seamless and painless, and we've been using it, I'd say, pretty successfully ever since then.
Well, that's great. That's great. It's a great story to hear that. And thank you very much for selecting Solidworks PDM Professional. I have to believe that there's probably a selection criteria that you folks had on what you wanted the system to do, some minimum requirements, capabilities, et cetera, for your product design requirements there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. One of the bad experiences we had with our previous solution was data getting overwritten or lost. If two people opened the same file at the same time, things like that, that was just a very bad situation to be in. So we need to make sure that everything was revision controlled, all past versions were saved, that people were locked out of checked out files, basic product data management, things like that. The second is that we really needed it to be fairly easy to learn. So we have over the last year, we've more than doubled the number of engineers that work for our company. And we need all of them to get up to speed and using the system very quickly. And so something that takes a long time to learn, more than a week or two to get used to and start actually using the data management system is going to be, it would really hold us back. So that was the second thing. And the third thing that we really needed was, this one is going to sound kind of trivial, but it turns out to be actually pretty important for us. In our old system, the way that we actually assigned part numbers was we literally kept a spreadsheet with a list of our parts and a list of each part number. And each time we added one, we incremented the part number in the spreadsheet. And again, this is one of these things we look back at and kind of laugh at how clunky it was. But that's what we did. And now that we have, thousands of parts in our inventory, we needed a much better way to do that. And one of the features that we got from PDM, from our VAR, was actually a way to serialize each part that we add.
That's all very interesting. How about with any regards to like any regulatory compliances, such as now or in the future? I mean, is Green Machine striving to meet anything like that, and where might PDM Professional play in that?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now we are actually in the process of getting ISO 9001 certification and having PDM to manage our data, to actually help us comply with a lot of the procedures that are in our QMS. It's actually pretty critical to that certification process. There would be ways that we could get ISO without having a robust data management system, but it just makes it a lot easier to build a lot of those procedures into the software and let the software actually handle the workflows and the approvals and the processes and so on.
So not only for your part design is PDM Professional being used, but for other non-CAD, like as you just explained, the ISO documents. I didn't hear you mention anything about bill of materials, and that's always a big topic in our industrial equipment type of customers, and how the bill of materials are generated, managed, and then possibly passed to an ERP system. Is that part of the selection criteria as well?
It sure was, and I should have mentioned that before. Before we had PDM, what we did was generate a bill of materials from Solidworks using its own sort of built-in bill of materials feature. And that worked well enough, but it was fairly hard to maintain because essentially we would just produce a spreadsheet, and then that spreadsheet was a static document that we then had to have somebody, the configuration manager, if we actually had one, to maintain those documents. Now that we have PDM, I mean, one nice thing is we can produce a bill of materials directly within PDM without having to open SolidWorks. And that's actually nice for non-CAD users to go in and get that bill of materials, make sure that it's updated and so on, without actually having to have SolidWorks access.
All right, very nice. And well, thank you for clarifying the bill of material ERP topic. I mean, it comes up almost every customer situation, especially in industrial equipment. You mentioned many benefits. Are there any others that you'd like to share about benefits realized or things that PDM Professional is delivering that maybe you didn't expect on this journey so far?
So I would say the biggest thing that I was not expecting was basically the flexibility of the system and the ease of use, even at the point of making modifications to our own system. So, we got it set up by our VAR. I'll just plug them as CAD Dimensions in Buffalo, New York, and they've been incredibly helpful in getting us set up with PDM, always being there to help us out when we do have an issue, which is fortunately actually pretty rare. But, beyond the initial setup, we've been able to set up our own workflows, add, change lists, whatever we need in the system, make our own data cards. And all of that has been done by Green Machine people, mostly me, actually. And, I have some background in computers, but definitely not in PDM. And I was able to get in there and within a couple of weeks know how to make all the changes we needed. So it's pretty easy to use. It's pretty easy for us to sort of tailor to our own needs. And it's also, they're pretty hands off. There isn't a lot that's locked down. We don't have to ask for permission to do a lot of this stuff. I guess that could get a little dangerous at some point, but fortunately anything that we do, we can go back and fix. So I'd say that was really the biggest thing is we were a little nervous at first with such a big system, but it's turned out to, we basically make it as simple or as complicated as we need it to be.
Okay, very good. Now, before I ask this next question, you mentioned that you're in Boulder today, and your headquarters are in Buffalo. So, through the current world situation, are there other user locations that you're having to deal with and contend with, and where, PDM Pro and SolidWorks are being utilized?
We do have other locations. We have a team in Boston, Massachusetts. We have 2 people now in Boulder, and both of us are working from home in different cities. We have a team in China that does a lot of our supply chain management, and then we have other people in a couple other areas if they need to work from home or something. Even if it's in Buffalo, sometimes they especially right now with COVID going on, if they go and hug somebody and then that person turned up COVID positive a week later, they have to stay home for 2 weeks. So we definitely have people all over the place in a lot of different situations. And so far that hasn't presented much of a problem at all.
That's great, Noah. The question I was going to ask you next was about a very popular capability in PDM Professional is the workflow capabilities. Maybe you could share the level and how that's being utilized a little bit. Sure.
So up until now, our approach has been keep it simple. So our workflows are pretty basic. They're a little bit of a step up from what was out of the box. We have different workflows for, say, Office documents and CAD files. But essentially, we have been able to build the workflows that we wanted. Very good. Now, just about Green Machine, you mentioned the products you guys design and build. Is that 100% by Green Machine personnel and employees, where you do all the manufacturing or is there any type of working with external teams or parties? So yeah, we definitely interact with a lot of third parties. And we have a document handoff that needs to happen with all of them. As of right now, that document handoff is largely manual. Having PDM to at least make sure that internally we know which is the latest revision of various documents and have notifications when there are revision changes to products. That helps us at least know when we need to get those documents to those suppliers. But what we really want to do, and one of our major next steps, is implement something like the web interface, so that our suppliers have access to those documents sort of automatically and without us having to deliver them to them manually. Okay, perfect. Well, you've answered all the questions I have, and before we say goodbye, any last comments or thing you might want to share before we say goodbye? Well, I would say I really appreciate you having me on. It's fun to get to tell people about our experience. SolidWorks and PDM and in particular our local bar that we've worked with have just been, it's been a lifesaver for the company. Like I said, there are other options out there, but we got with SolidWorks early on. We haven't seen any reason to move away from it. And what we found is that with PDM and some of the other offerings that we're looking at, in terms of product lifecycle management, SolidWorks Manage, other things that we have on our radar, it looks like as we grow, we're able to grow into the products pretty well. So that's what I would say, is that they seem to be filling our needs now and in the foreseeable future. Well, thank you very much, Noah, for sharing your story and your journey so far to date. I think we'll probably have more conversations down the road as this continues. And on behalf of SolidWorks, thank you. You bet. Thank you, Patrick.
Fascinating. I really thought it was interesting when Noah said that PDM Professional works for their entire team, which is scattered across the country in Boulder, Boston, and Buffalo. PDM Professional continues to be a great choice for our clients who are looking for an on-premise solution. Lisa, some of our clients, although trying to solve the same problems, are looking for a cloud solution. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I'm a big fan of data management in general. I think we all know that. However, some clients don't have the IT infrastructure or personnel for implementing our desktop PDM solutions. That requires servers, VPN connections, and the like.
That's a great point, Lisa. I'd probably add that some companies don't want to invest in that IT infrastructure or the teams to support it. To understand this approach better, we reached out to a client who recently started to use the 3DEXPERIENCE platform to manage their Solidworks data.
Yes, we did. Vortex IoT is a startup based out of Wales, UK, and I'm going to let our other special guest, Bryce Davies, Senior Product Design Engineer at Vortex IoT, give us detail about the company and their cloud solution selection. Hello, Bryce, and thank you for agreeing to share your story with our 3DEXPERIENCE World 2021 audience today. If you wouldn't mind, could you share some details about your company, Vortex IoT, and the exciting technology you guys are working on?
Hello, thank you very much for having me. So I work for a company called Vortex IoT, who are a new and exciting company where we specialize in monitoring the outside environment. So one of the good examples is we have a product line called AQM, where we monitor the environment such as pollutions and particulate matters in harsh environments such as heavy industry, as well as dense population areas such as towns, cities, and football stadiums. I myself am the Senior Product Design Engineer at Vortex, and I'm responsible for turning the products from concept and initial design all the way through to mass production.
Thanks for that background. It's really exciting when we meet clients that are using our software to make a difference in the world and being able to do things like detect pollutants in the air like you guys are doing. So now that we know a little bit about Vortex IoT and your role there as a senior product designer, would you like to share a little bit about your experience with SolidWorks and also the beginnings of the journey with 3DEXPERIENCE platform?
Yeah. Whilst I joined Vortex IoT, we didn't actually have a CAD package in place. And SolidWorks were really supportive with us and sort of almost held our hand effectively, was able to give us a startup package which enabled us to get our hands on with SolidWorks and be able to begin almost communicating with our factories and our third-party manufacturers to be able to generate a concept and actually be able to model our ideas, our concepts, and our rough prototypes, which was really, really useful. We then really successfully grew the team, and we were effectively using SolidWorks through a USB stick, sharing files between team members, which was an experience, but it was okay. We did have issues here and there, and then we had what the rest of the world did, which was a pandemic, and realized that remote working became a new norm, which was a real issue for us, as we didn't have any cloud-based storage. So we then went along the lines of 3DEXPERIENCE, which allowed us to work remotely.
Great. So SolidWorks at Vortex IoT since day one. That's great. Always good to hear that, and that you took advantage of our startup program, formerly known as the Entrepreneur Program. And can you tell us, so you said a little bit about how you were managing the files. So you said you were using a USB stick, and then the pandemic hit. So if you could just, obviously you had some pains there, that you went through some growing pains, adding people, but also that inability to now share the USB stick. So how did you try to manage when you moved beyond, when you guys were remote, what kind of things did you try?
That's a really good question. So unfortunately, or fortunately, depends how you look at it, we learned the hard way on this matter. And when it was just myself doing the majority of the CAD work, it was not an issue because I could keep everything local onto my computer. However, once we had new members of the staff join who also needed access to CAD, we had a couple of scenarios where CAD files on different computers weren't synced, weren't revision controlled, which became an issue. We also had collaboration issues where if we had a file on another colleague's computer and they were off for the day, we didn't have access to that CAD file, which is absurdly stressful in certain scenarios. We then tried to integrate a third-party cloud service where effectively we could sync all computers together, which seemed like a fantastic idea, although this cloud service was just made for documents, and so it ended up corrupting all of our CAD data, which was just catastrophic, to be honest with you. It was not a good experience for us, but we were able to learn from that, definitely. And so then we kept on trying to use USB sticks and trying to use a local NAS for file storage, and realized that we really did need to find a better solution. And so we actually contacted our reseller, who were able to point us towards the direction of 3DEXPERIENCE, which was made for CAD, which makes a massive difference.
Well, great. And we thank you for selecting the 3DEXPERIENCE platform for your product data management. So, what was your experience like? I know you said you had issues, right? So what was that criteria that you were looking for? You must have something in mind, besides not corrupting files, something in mind that it had to do to be a satisfactory solution for Vortex.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll be completely honest, the pandemic hit us with a massive shockwave. We had to implement something very quickly because we were already remote working by this point. So our criteria was fairly straightforward, which was we needed remote access for all users. And this needs to be an international remote access as well, as a few of us work in different countries at different times of the year. So it's really important. We also needed a sync option to ensure that the files between all computers are the same revision and the same date. So we know which file we should be working at and which is the latest file, because that is vital so you don't rework it. And we also wanted access control for two reasons. One, we like to share files with third parties, such as manufacturers for mass production, as well as different departments within the company. So it's really vital to ensure that those individuals only have access to the files they're meant to have access to, and not access to everything, which is just undesirable for IP purposes. We were then looking at effectively an option to be able to state who was working on which file, which in 3DEXPERIENCE is known as reserve or unreserved. And this was really vital, as we didn't both want to be working on, myself and a colleague didn't want to be working on the same file to have us effectively reinvent the wheel twice and have two different copies of this file. So that was really important. And the biggest one by far was it had to be a hosted platform. We didn't have a massive server infrastructure, and neither did we have tens of thousands of pounds to invest in servers. So it had to be a solution that we could set up fairly fluently. It would integrate with Solidworks really nicely, and the user experience would be intuitive, which is really important, as I didn't want to have to export my files every time I want to save to the cloud. So it was really a seamless integration, but also an integration that could be done on someone else's hardware, on the cloud, and not on our own server infrastructure. So that was really important to us.
So how did you find the onboarding process, and what was it like to get the 3DEXPERIENCE platform up and running for your company?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. And if I'm honest, it was a lot simpler than even I expected. We're always told it's a really quick and seamless integration. But as usual, we were fairly skeptical on this. And, we gave it a go, and our reseller was able to give us a really good demonstration of the product. They were able to give us a hands-on experience with it as well, which is vital, because we are able to sort of test and evaluate it for ourselves. Once we decided that 3DEXPERIENCE seemed to be the right product for us, we then simply contact reseller, asked us to be able to have our login accounts accepted. And the onboarding of getting access to the platform was as simple as we received an email, which was an invitation. Click the link, set up your password, create your account, and you're in. And then it was simply a case of I, myself, and one of the qualified engineers sat down. We configured the platform and sort of tailored it to our use case, our need, our workflow, and how we like to work. We did a couple of test uploads to ensure that our models, uploaded fine, there were no issues and no concerns. And then it was a case of simply myself just sitting down, inviting my members of the team and getting them onto the system and simply sharing a custom dashboard. If I'm honest, I think we spent about 3 days getting the platform configured to, our use case, which is no time at all, really. That's absolutely fine.
Great. So obviously, based on what you're saying, you're the administrator of the system. So after that initial onboarding and getting the settings and the configuration correct, which there are some choices to make. So like you said, it's not, you just don't fire it up. You do have to make some choices that fits for your workflow and how you work with your users. How did you find your time commitment as an administrator, both at the beginning and then ongoing? How much time do you spend actually on the system, fixing things or doing anything?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. If I'm completely honest, not much at all. So I don't know how that comes across. However, we simply tried, I think I sat down with our reseller for 3 hours a week for the first 4 weeks, and we sort of customized it, configured it, stuff like the part numbering system or revision control. We sort of just finalized that to customize it to our workflow and our use case. And then after that, I sort of just left it. It just works. Which is always good. I like it. It's always nice to be able to spin up a platform and it just works. It hasn't done a catastrophic update and broken or anything, which is lovely. And then the only time I've actually touched it is when we've had new trainees, new starters with the company. I've simply just had to invite them and add roles to them and add them to our dashboard. Beyond that, I barely do any administration anymore, if I'm honest. Okay. Only when I need to configure something, seems to have been fairly consistent.
So what are some of the benefits you've gotten from the cloud solution? Besides, I know you said it was imperative to have a cloud solution, that was at the heart of your company is a cloud solution, and having the SolidWorks add-in be fluent and seamless for the users. But do you ever use the browser interface? Does that ever come in handy to that any device, anywhere type aspect of the platform?
Yeah, so that's one of the points that's a massive advantage, I think, in this day and age, is that majority of platforms are now often moving to the web-based access portal. And it's becoming a standardization across everything now. And it's really useful because obviously if I just want to access some of the parts or do a revision control or just simply investigate which parts are available, we have the web-based user graphical interface just on the web page. I just fire up my web browser, I access it, and I have access to all the parts. I can even preview them if I so wish, which is really useful if I'm on my tablet or I'm on a laptop that doesn't have SolidWorks. I don't need SolidWorks to be able to access our parts, to be able to preview them and be able to move them around and share them. And so from that point of view, it is really nice because I can access it on any device and I don't have to have all the licenses sorted. It's just my account and my credentials, and it does make it a lot simpler for me, especially when I'm mobile. Definitely when I'm mobile and I have to review a drawing or a design.
Great. Oh, good to hear. Yeah, always good to hear that it's working on the different devices and everything. So as far as where you go next, Vortex IoT is, we've talked before, it's a growing company. You guys are expanding and obviously going into production, high volume production. Do you have any expansion plans, for the 3DEXPERIENCE platform? You mentioned it's easy to add users, add roles. Do you have any plans for using more functionality of the 3DEXPERIENCE platform?
Yes, we do. Interestingly, we are actually looking into adding PCBs. I believe you've got a connector for that to allow us to import PCBs and design schematics. So we have in-house PCB prototyping. So we actually design and manufacture our own PCBs, which are printed circuit boards, effectively a motherboard, you would call it, or a little town and city is what it's often described as. And we import these into our CAD models to ensure that we got clearance between components. And we've actually been working with our other departments to import the 3D files. So we can actually perform clearance checks and interference checks to ensure that, one, we're not clashing with any components, and two, we're not actually shorting out any components within the motherboard or the PCB with our screws and bolts, which is really useful. So we're definitely looking into sort of, I don't know how to say it, having several departments being able to work with us and being able to share their data, and for us to be able to pull it all into one location, which is fairly useful for us, I would say.
Yep. I think in the industry we call that a single system of truth. So that's just, but that's a buzzword. But it's good to hear someone's actually using it. So this has been great, Bryce. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, anything you want to share about your journey that other users that might be in a similar situation to you that are using SolidWorks and are looking for that cloud solution, if there's any words of advice you have for them or anything else you'd like to say.
Yeah, I'd probably say the biggest thing I would say is make sure you've got a backup of your work, because it's really painful when you don't, and ensure that you can have a platform that works for you and integrates well with your software, because there's so many third-party cloud providers out there, but you need to be very careful with it. And I think sometimes you need the right tool for the right job. And definitely with CAD, it's not something you want to underestimate, because once your files are gone, it can be a lot of work lost and a lot of stress gained, I would say. So learn from our mistake on this one.
Great. Well, not great, but but thank you. Appreciate it. Have a great day. Appreciate your help with our session with our users.
Yes. Thank you very much. And I will speak to you all soon.
Thank you.
Patrick, Lisa, these have been really great stories from a couple of our clients. There were a couple points that Noah and Bryce brought up that I wanted to expand upon. Noah mentioned some future initiatives that Green Machine has. Patrick, can you elaborate?
Certainly, Mark. A few things stood out where I feel Green Machine can continue to benefit from using PDM Professional. First, PDM Professional Web 2 will be a way to enable their outside contractors to have controlled access to release data as needed. This will eliminate the hassle to provide copies of files to work from. Web 2 is included with every license of PDM Professional. Since the early days, Web 2 has been enabling companies with remote data access for various requirements. In the case of Green Machine, they'll be looking to improve upon a more hassle-free method to share release data to external manufacturing firms in a secure and controlled manner. With included eDrawings Professional, the external users can obtain measurements without the need to open in Solidworks. Whether you're a field engineer and need to access the latest designs and documents, participate in a change process, or view the latest bill of materials information, Web 2 is being used to handle these tasks and more.
I also heard Noah talk about a future initiative to better automate their engineering change process.
You're right, Lisa. They have a project underway with their partner, CAD Dimensions, to design a best-in-class engineering change process managed by PDM Professional. This will take advantage of more automation techniques within PDM Professional workflow. A very popular one is automated PDF generation upon an event such as a workflow change state to approved. A PDF is generated, placed in the appropriate location, and notifications are automatically sent. This can include external parties, plus you can also automate bill of materials information for ERP export.
That's great, Patrick. Now, Lisa, Bryce mentioned how easy it was to get access and implement their solution.
Exactly. That is one of the main attractions of the 3DEXPERIENCE platform. You heard Bryce mention that in order to get access for the users, all they had to do was provide email addresses and they were all in. Bryce is a big fan of the dashboards and the bookmark capabilities. He's streamlined the onboarding at his company by creating a standard dashboard for all the users that included bookmarks for their products as well as the viewer. This way the users didn't have to do it themselves, and he knew what everybody was looking at, the same interface in the browser from any device, anywhere, by the way. It's very similar to the way the folder structure is the same in PDM Professional, and you just make sure it's very consistent.
Lisa, looking at the products created at Vortex IoT, they must have electrical CAD data to manage. Are they looking at our Altium Designer connector for the 3DEXPERIENCE platform?
Absolutely, Patrick. You're right. The future expansion options for Vortex IoT, as we mentioned, include the Collaborative Designer for Altium Designer. It allows the electrical Altium designers to connect to the platform to manage their data, including the libraries and the manufacturing output files. This means that all of the setup done by Bryce for the mechanical users will automatically apply to the electrical users as well. So things like the access control, revision control, and the workflow that he's established for the engineering data in general. The Altium connector also creates product structure that then can be added to make that complete bill of materials of their products. And the roles of the product release engineer and 3D product architect can manage all of that data, mechanical and electrical, even for non-CAD users, right? So it just allows you to have access and create more engineering information, stuff that may not have ever been modeled at all. And it's a super easy way to add roles on the 3DEXPERIENCE platform. You can expand it very easily.
Returning to our story where people scattered throughout the world were collectively working toward a common goal, here's another historical example and relative to today's pandemic. Jonas Salk, Hillary Kaprowski, and Albert Sabin all played pivotal roles in developing the polio vaccine, yet they didn't work together or share their notes. Today, we heard from Noah, located in Colorado, and Bryce, from Germany, utilizing completely different data management tools, yet both products solve their challenge of managing all types of data, CAD and non-CAD, across their entire organization. If you are like Noah and Bryce and are looking for ways to manage your SOLIDWORKS data, remember, you have choices, and we recommend visiting our website and contacting your local reseller for more information. Enjoy the rest of 3DEXPERIENCE World.